Almost every major failure in the modern world began as something that worked. Not briefly, not accidentally, not partially. It worked reliably, repeatedly, and convincingly. It was trusted, copied, scaled. The logic was never questioned. It seemed self-evident. If it works here, it will work everywhere. That assumption has toppled economies, overloaded infrastructures, and destabilized systems that span continents. Not because the initial design was flawed, but because scale does not reward correctness. It punishes assumptions, and it magnifies the hidden. We talk about scale as if it is simply growth. More people, more data, more energy, more connections. But scale is not addition. It is transformation. A system with 10 participants and a system with 10 million participants do not behave as scaled versions of the same entity. They behave as different organisms entirely. At small scale, cause and effect remain tightly coupled. Actions are observable. Mistakes have identifiable fingerprints. Correction is intuitive. Adaptation is cheap. At large scale, cause and effect drift apart. Individual actions dissolve into aggregates. Responsibility fragments. The system responds to statistics, not people, and statistics are indifferent. At first, the mismatch is invisible. Nothing seems broken. The rules quietly stop applying. What worked yesterday still appears to work today, until it doesn't. A small community regulates itself through memory. History matters. Reputation matters. A large city cannot rely on memory. It relies on abstraction. Metrics replace relationships. Rules replace judgment. A small organization coordinates through trust. A global one coordinates through process. A small ecosystem absorbs damage. A planetary system accumulates it. Scale introduces 3 transformations. Feedback slows. Signals arrive late, distorted, averaged. Coordination costs rise. Every new connection multiplies friction. Failure modes multiply. The system gains ways to break that were impossible before. At this point, the system stops behaving like a tool. It behaves like an environment. Something you exist inside, not something you operate. Patterns emerge, trends dominate, control becomes probabilistic. Yet small system logic continues to be applied. This is where disasters incubate silently. The most dangerous systems are built by success, not failure. Success creates the illusion of safety. Each successful iteration strengthens belief. Each solved problem reinforces the core logic. Each expansion validates the system's design. But scale does not test logic. It tests assumptions. Assumptions about compliance, incentives, fairness, reversibility. At small scale, assumptions hide in noise. Social mechanisms correct them. Adaptation is informal, rapid, and local. At large scale, assumptions crystallize into structure. When a structural assumption is wrong, it becomes systemic. Local fixes fail. The error propagates. Scale transforms errors into crises. This is why scaled systems rarely fail gradually. They reorganize violently. They do not degrade. They invert. They betray. Failure at scale is shocking. It is not ignorance. It is betrayal. This worked before. We tested it. This was proven. All true. At a smaller size, scale does not erase success. It renders it irrelevant. What once produced resilience now produces fragility. What once allowed flexibility now enforces rigidity. Rollback exists at small scale. You can revise, you can retreat, you can undo. At large scale, rollback disappears. Dependencies multiply. Alternatives vanish. The system becomes embedded. It cannot reverse. Failure stops being a mistake. It becomes a phase change. Human intelligence evolved for small groups, short timelines, and visible consequences. Scale defeats all three. Timelines stretch beyond lifetimes, effects drift beyond perception, responsibility disperses until no one can own it. Intelligence does not vanish, it becomes peripheral. The system's internal dynamics overpower the intentions of its designers. Understanding arrives too late. By the time humans comprehend the change, the system has already adapted to conditions that no longer exist. Scale does not wait for comprehension. It moves regardless. Scaling feels rational. It promises efficiency, reach, optimization, and initially it delivers. Costs fall, output rises, complexity seems manageable. This creates momentum. Momentum reframes hesitation as fear. Fear is interpreted as incompetence. So systems grow past the point where understanding can keep up. Not because warnings are absent, but because stopping seems irrational. Scale rewards continuation, not reflection. Every scaled system eventually crosses a point where it can no longer behave like itself. Dependencies multiply, alternatives disappear, exit paths vanish. The system becomes necessary before it is understood. At this point, recognition of failure does not restore control. The system persists until it reorganizes itself through crisis. This is not malfunction. It is scale completing its logic. As scale increases, human perception fails to track causality. People assume control where none exists. They act as if the system will behave predictably. They predict using intuition from small-scale environments. The mismatch grows exponentially. Scale magnifies misalignment. Timing errors become critical. Coordination gaps cascade. Local success misleads global judgment. And yet society repeats the same assumptions because the initial success was convincing. Because growth feels rational. Because the immediate reward reinforces the illusion. The greatest threat to modern systems is not ignorance. It is repeating small-scale logic inside large-scale reality. Scale does not ask whether an idea deserves to grow. It only asks whether it can. Once it does, the rules you trusted no longer apply. Every system that survives long enough will face this moment. Not when it breaks, not when it fails, but when it becomes too large to behave like itself.